and welcome to another Unity 5 tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create an asteroids game. So this game fits into my beginner tutorials at about let's say part 15. So just after I think we did the arrays one. If you're up to that point you should be fine with this tutorial, and if you already know Unity and coding and that, then this will be a breeze. So it's a very basic game and it's going to step through all the different little elements to put a complete game together. Right, so first of all, what we need is some assets to play with. Now, I've got myself from the assets store a spaceship, which is down here. I think it's this one. If I drag it into the scene and just zoom in on it, you can see that there. So this is a free pack that you can get. Okay, so it doesn't matter what your spaceship looks like, but something like this, it would be nice. Also, make sure that the x-axis of the actual model is to the sides and the forward direction is the blue vector going forward in your spaceship, like that. Okay, the other thing we're going to put into this game is a plane. And that plane is going to need stars on the background. So you'll need a seamless star texture. So let me just add that in while we're doing stuff. Let's add in a plane. Okay, so there's our plane. Now I want to look down the scene. And I want to make sure that the plane is below the spaceship, like that. So you want to look down the y-axis and you want to set your camera to be looking down the y-axis as well. I've already set my camera up, and if we just have a look at what it's set to, so it's set to 0 position in the X and 0 in the Z. Now this is going to be important later on when we start to do the coding. The Y is not going to matter, okay? That's just going to adjust how close or how far away you are from your scene. So that kind of depends on, how big you want it and how big your plane is. So with that in mind, if we just look at what's in this camera view, now I've also set the game view to standalone 2024 by 768 as the standard size that we're working with. So this is the resolution of the game. Of course, you can set it to whatever resolution that you like to work with. But the important thing is that we move this plane around, and I might just resize it to fit into that space, because it's going to be the complete background of the game. Now the other thing you'll want to do is move your model as well, and we're going to move that down the bottom here. Okay, now if you want to make your game more difficult, you probably want a bigger spaceship because you're kind of going to be easy dodging things in there. Right, so now we don't want to really move stuff too much in that camera view and leave the camera where it is. Okay, so now that we've got our plane, we want to put onto it a seamless texture of stars. And that's because we're going to make the background scroll and make it look like an endless game, that the spaceship is moving but the background is actually the one doing all the work. So it'll actually stay static within the environment. So I've grabbed myself a tileable star scene, which I'm just going to drag and drop it onto my plane. Okay, there you can see it there. And all I did to find that was type in seamless stars into Google, and let me just find that for you. Okay, so this is a search on seamless stars, and these are some of the things you'll find, and I grabbed this one and I've put that onto my background. Okay, now whilst we have our background, what you'll also want to do is set the shader of that plane to be an unlit texture, which I've already done here. So you'll start out as standard. Now by making it an unlit texture, it won't be relying on the directional light in the scene for the lighting, which is not what you want, because you don't want a shiny patch on this background. It's meant to be showing stars that are at a distance. Okay, so the final thing that you're going to need for this is some explosions. And in the asset store, there's a really nice little free pack that you can get called FX Explosion Pack. So grab that and put that into your project as well. The last thing that you'll need are some rocks to act as asteroids. So I found some rock prefabs in the asset store again that were free, and there's a whole bunch of them there, so just pick the ones you like. If you don't want to download some asteroids at this moment, you can also just use spheres. It gives you the same idea of how this game's going to work. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we want to do is make our star background scroll. And we're going to use a technique called UV scrolling. Now, I talked about UVs back in one of the beginner tutorials when we talked about materials and the way the materials map to a surface. So UVs on the surface of a plane, or any polygon for that matter, are mapped to each of the physical vertices of this. So imagine this was a single square. Okay, I know it's multiple squares, but imagine it's one square. And this top vertice here would be 0, 0, and this one down here would be 1, 1. Now, that's the UV coordinates. So what the UVs do is grab the texture and stretch it across the surface, like, I guess, putting a tablecloth or something over a surface. But imagine it's kind of a plastic tablecloth. So if the texture is only sort of this big like that, it's actually grabbing it and stretching it right down to here. Now, if you told it to stretch the UVs from 0, 0 to 0.5, 0.5, then it would only stretch it halfway to here. And you could also tell the UVs that you wanted it from starting at 0.5, 0.5, which would be in the middle, and going to 1, 1, which would mean you'd get the texture just down in here. But what we're going to do with this to make this scroll over the surface is basically take this 0, 0 value of the UVs and move it down, continually sort of cycle it down, which will move the texture with it along the surface. So to do that, you'll need a script. So create a new C# script and call it scrolling. I've already got one I've written, so I'm just going to drag that in and I'll show you what's in there. So I'm putting this inside the asset folder at the top level where I like to put things so I can find them. Some people like to have a script folder, which is probably a neater idea than the way I do, but I can never find things if I start burying them everywhere. Okay, here's our plane. We're going to add this scrolling script onto the plane. So let's open up that script and have a look what's inside of it. So let me just shut this window. Okay, so inside this script, it has a vector2 construct, okay, because UVs only work in 2-dimensional coordinates. So we only need to specify it as values between 0 and 1. And as you can see here, the speed at which the UVs will be changing are between 0 and 1 as well. And this one here is actually going to scroll the UVs with a speed of -1 on the Y and nothing on the X. So the UVs are actually going to scroll down the screen here. And then the offset of those UVs, of how much this 0, 0 point here has been moved down, and all the other points for that matter, is based on the speed multiplied by the time between the frames. And that value is then used to set the position. So you use this set texture offset function. And that will set the position of the texture on the surface. All right, so let's just have a look at what that does now that I've added it. Just press play, and you'll see that it's now a scrolling background, and it's very, very fast. So if you want to slow that down, you can change the scrolling UV value, which is this one here. So -1's probably too much. Let's just halve that to -0.5. Go back and run. Okay, it's a bit better. It's probably still a bit too fast. So let's just dial that right down. Let's put it down to negative 0.1, save that, and run it. Okay, that's a better speed for me. You might want to have something that's a little bit faster. When it's too fast, the background gets really blurry and you can't see it. Now, let me just show you what happens with those UVs here. If we made this a positive value in the Y for the UV speed and save it, our background will now scroll in the other direction and it'll look like our ship's going backwards. Okay, and then if we add in an X value as well, like a 1 here, you'll start to scroll in the X direction and the Y direction, which is going to give us a diagonal scrolling pattern there. Okay, so this is quite a great effect for creating like I guess it's the space equivalent of an endless runner, where the space is just constantly moving and there's nothing going on in the game. Look, there's just a plane with a texture scrolling over the top, which makes it look like our little ship is moving. So let's go back, and I'm going to get rid of that X direction and put this back to -1 for there. All right, so let's save that. That's all the scrolling done, so we don't need to touch that again. Now let's add the controls for our ship. So in the project, go Create, C#, and let's call this Controls. And open up that. And in the update, I'm going to add some code here. This code uses the right and left arrow keys. So if it's our right arrow key, then we're going to minus 0.1 F in the translate for the X. And if it's the left arrow key, we're going to add 1 to the translate in the X again. So we're going in either direction, which is going to move our spaceship across the screen. So save that, and let's just switch back to here and attach that controls to your ship. Okay, that's attached. Now just play it and use your arrow keys. Now, what you're going to notice first of all is that these controls are backwards. So I'm holding down the left and it's going in that direction, and I'm holding down the right and it's going in that direction. So I've obviously got those translates around the wrong way. So that's easily fixed. So let's go back in here. And what we do is we just put that to a positive and that to a negative. Now, the amount of movement you get in your ship is going to be 0.1 F here. And you might want to increase this if you want your ship to move faster across the surface. So if you made that 0.2 and this one 0.2, save that and play. It should now have the right movement for the keys and it's a lot faster. Okay, again, those settings are completely up to you. Now, all we're going to be doing in this game is actually moving back and forward across the screen, and the asteroids will come down. So we can't go forward and we can't go backwards. And I actually think I might like my spaceship just forward a little bit. So I'm just going to select it and move it up the screen there. And I might resize it while I'm here too. Okay. Right, so let's play that and have a look. Okay, now currently, if I keep pressing the arrow key, my ship will go off the screen forever, and it will do that in this direction as well. So we want to add some kind of restraint to stop it from moving. So to do that and to figure out what those confines of our ship are, we need to have a look at the X position of our model, because that's the direction it's moving in. So if we move it this way, as far as we would like it to possibly go in the game, and then take notice of this value here. Okay, so at negative 3.81 in my game, the ship is as far to the left as I'd like it. Now, if I just round that to -4, okay, that's probably not too bad, -4. Now, let's move it back in the other direction. And what I'm going to do is suggest that it's probably about 4 in that direction as well, because the camera is on 0. So we've got 0 right down the center here, which makes it nice and symmetrical. So positive 4 will be as far as we're going to let it go to the right. So now we need to code those into the control script as some conditions to stop it from moving any further in that direction. Okay, so open up the control script, and in here we're going to say if the input key is right and the X position of the ship is less than 4, then we can keep moving right. So that would be this.transform.position.x less than 4, which will stop us from moving right. And we want to do that for the left as well. And the left will be -4, but we want to be greater than -4. So less than 4 and greater than -4 are the confines for our screen for our ship. So let's save, go back, test it, and we're now going to find that it will stop us from moving off the screen. Okay, so that's the controls done. We'll now add in the asteroids. So the asteroids are going to spawn from up here, out of the view of the camera, and then fall down the screen. So the first thing you need to check is the size of your asteroids. So let's just, I'm going to find one of my rocks that I brought in before and just drag it in to the project. Now you can see that that's either very close to the camera or absolutely massive. Okay, it's absolutely massive, right? So I'll just want to scale that down to the size I kind of want in my scene, and let's bring it down into the front of the camera. Yeah, okay, I think that's probably about right. So now that I've got this particular rock sized the way I want, and I might even actually want to rotate that around. Don't like the direction it's facing. Okay, that looks a bit more asteroid rather than perfect looking. Okay, so this is going to fall down the screen. There's the rock. Now I'm going to go into the assets folder, and I'm going to create a new prefab out of this rock, which has my new settings on it. So I'm just going to drop it down into the assets folder to create that new prefab, and I'll rename it to asteroid, so I know that is my asteroid that I want to use. Now I can delete this particular asteroid from the hierarchy. All right, so the next thing I need is a spawn point. Now I usually use a cube as a spawn point because I can see where that cube is. Now we want the cube to spawn the asteroids in the same plane as the spaceship. Right, so the spaceship's plane in its Y direction, if I just rotate around like this, when these asteroids fall down the screen, we want them to be able to collide with the ship. So they need to be in the same Y-axis, which is this one here looking down the screen. Even think I might just pick up the model. I'm not sure if this is too close to that plane, because some of the asteroids might end up flying through the plane after a collision. It might be just worth moving this up just a little bit in its Y direction. Now, whatever the Y direction of that particular model is, okay, so we've got minus 3.43. Let's just make that minus 4. Oh, that was too short, wasn't it? Minus 3. Let's make it minus 3. You can make yours whatever looks good. Now, my spawn cube, which is here, also needs to be at minus 3 in that Y direction, so that now they're in the same plane. Okay, and you can see that there, that the center of this ship and the center of this cube align well in that direction, so that when the asteroids fall out of this cube, they're going to be on a collision course with that ship. Right, so this cube can then get rid of its box collider because we don't want asteroids colliding with it. So let's remove that component, and we will move it just up. So it's just outside of this camera view so that you can't see it. Now to make the asteroid spawn, let's go create C# script, call it spawn. And I'll open that up and we'll add the code in here to instantiate these asteroid objects. The first thing you need is the exposed variable to pass in the asteroid prefab to our spawner so it can create them. And then down here in the update loop, we're going to have a random chance of instantiating an asteroid. So every 10 in 1,000, we're going to create an asteroid. Now, we then set the position, of the asteroid to the transform position X, Y, and Z of the spawner, which is the cube. So the asteroids will all start at the cube. And then we're going to instantiate the asteroid object at that position. And I've got the identity rotation here, which is like a 0 rotation. I actually want to use the rotation that I gave to my prefab because I spent that time turning it around. So let's do the asteroid objects transform.rotation. Now I am instantiating inside the update loop, which is a big no-no as far as processing heaviness goes, and we probably should use a pool, object pool, but I'm not going to in this case because it's really quite a low level game and it's not very processor heavy. But if you're going to have a very fast game, then this is not the way to go, and we are going to destroy the asteroids later, so there won't be a lot of instantiating going on. And I'm lazy, so this is the way we're doing it here. So let's just save this, and we will go back to our Unity, and we'll add that spawn script onto our cube, and then select the cube and have a look in the inspector, and you'll see that there's an asteroid object there. And what we want to do is drag and drop our asteroid object over onto that exposed variable. So now we will instantiate these asteroids. Okay, so let's give it a go. Make sure you're in the scene where you can see your cube so that you can see those asteroids when they spawn. You'll also see a list down here as well. Okay, right, so there's an asteroid, it has spawned, and then we'll get another one eventually. There's another one. Okay, so they're not spawning all that fast, and you can change that random range to whatever you like if you want to speed that up or not. Now you'll also notice that something that asteroids aren't doing is falling down the screen because we haven't made them do that yet. So the easy way to do that, now I'm just going to add another asteroid into our scene so we can see it, is to add a rigid body to this so that it falls under gravity. Okay, so onto our asteroid, just check that it doesn't already have anything like that attached to it. Okay, so we're going to add a rigid body. Now it also needs a collider, so I'll add a collider, and let's make it a sphere collider. Okay, so let's just check out where that sphere collider went, because it's going to be massive or it can be very tiny. So let's just see if we can change the radius to try and find where that sphere collider is. Oh, there it is. It's attached. It's just quite small. Now you'll see that this particular asteroid, and this is the issue I had before, is that background plane's quite close to what we're working with. But let me just move it because it's going to spawn about where that cube is. As long as that background plane, while we're here, we'll just check, doesn't have a collider on it, which it does. It doesn't need one, so I'll just turn that off. And let's just fix this sphere collider on there. Now we want to move it up a bit. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. You could probably use a capsule collider or something else that maybe fits a bit better. Yeah, that's not too bad. Okay, so the asteroid now has the collider on it, has the rigid body on it. Just hit apply to make sure that that goes back to that prefab so that it will have all those same properties. Now, when we run this, let me move this asteroid down into the scene. Okay, when we run this, something's going to happen that's very strange. Okay, did you see what happened? So the asteroid fell downwards, which it should, because if we look at the direction our game is playing, the Y is here. Okay, so it fell down, which is what gravity does. It falls down, and it falls down the Y direction by default. We actually want this to fall down in the negative Z direction because that's the way our game is facing. So to do that, we have to edit the preferences for that. So go into Edit, Project Settings, and Physics. And over in the the inspector, you'll find that gravity is set to negative 9.81 in the Y, which is Earth's gravity. We want to set that to negative 9.81 in the Z. Now, if you wanted that to be faster for those objects falling, you can just increase that. But it's going to be negative because it's going down the Z axis, and we'll set the Y gravity to 0. Okay, so now when we run this, our asteroid's going to fall that way. Yep. Okay, so that's what we want. And each one that gets spawned now, I think you might have seen it just then, it will do that as well. So let's just delete that first asteroid and play again and watch these fall down. When they eventually spawn. Here we go. Okay. Now they're very large, so it's up to you how big you want them. You can resize them. Now you'll also notice at this point is that they're all spawning right there and they're all falling down in exactly the same position. And that doesn't make a very compelling asteroid game because you could just keep your ship on this side of the screen and you wouldn't be hit. So when we spawn, we actually want to spawn at this height, but at some random location across this X direction. Okay, so let's just go back into our spawn code and quickly add a line of code here for the spawning X position of those asteroids. So it's going to be at the X position of the cube plus a random dot range that goes between negative, what was our ship for? Negative 4.0 F and 4.0 F. All right, so while I'm in here, I'm just going to bring this chance of spawn down to 10 in 500 just to make it a bit faster so we're not waiting around forever to see some effects. Okay, saving back to Unity, press play. Okay, so now you can see that they're getting spawned at different positions in the X direction. The other thing that's occurring is that it doesn't look as though they're in the same plane as this ship, because what's happening is that the ship doesn't have any colliders on it. So if I just pause there with that one, and we just have a look around here. Okay, so the ship is definitely heading for a collision course with this asteroid. And if I just select the top, you can see it's going to hit that collider. And so the ship itself needs to have a collider on it to cause a collision. So we can do that if we stop playing and select our model, and let's add a collider to it. I might add a box collider at this point. Okay. And let's just check that's kind of the right size. You could also add a mesh collider depending on your model. This model is got a whole bunch of sub pieces to it, which kind of makes it more complex to add more meshes and that. So we're just going to use a box collider because that's the easiest for now. And so let's just play. Let's try and on purpose collide with something. Okay, and you can see that's now working. Oh, that's an interesting effect. Okay, so all that physics is now working in this game. All right, so I'm going to leave that there for this tutorial. In the second part, we will start adding explosions for when things hit the ship, and also a health bar.